Okay, so we'll begin now from the paragraph after instructing Indra. Yeah. So over to Jay Prakash Prabhu.
After instructing Indra, Lord Krishna asked him to return to his kingdom in the heavenly planets and to remember always that he is never the supreme, but he is always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also advised him to remain as king of heaven, but to be careful of his false pride. After this, the transcendental Surabhi cow, who had come with Indra to see Krishna, offered her respectful obeisances unto him and worshipped him. Surabhi offered her prayers as follows: My dear Lord Krishna, you are the most powerful of all mystic yogis because you are the soul of the complete universe. And only from you has all this cosmic manifestation taken place. Therefore, although Indra tried his best to kill my descendant cows in Vrindavan, they remained under your shelter, and you have protected them all so well. Why do we not know anyone else as the Supreme, nor do we go to any other god or demigods for protection? Therefore, you are our Indra. You are the Supreme Father of the whole cosmic manifestation, and you are the protection and elevator of all the cows, Brahmins, demigods, and others who are pure devotees of your Lordship. O Super Soul of the universe, let us bathe you with our milk, for you are our Indra. O Lord, you appear just to diminish the burden of impure activities on the earth.
Okay, so now this prayers of Indra has finished. And Krishna is sending him back to heaven. And he just says, don't be proud now. Yeah. But Surabhi cow, when she comes, she's going to bring a different dynamic to this pastime now. Yeah. So does anyone remember how the Surabhi cow has come here? And who is Surabhi cow? Anyone remember? If you remember a little bit of it. Who is Surabhi cow?
Surabhi is the mother of all the cows, and she's come from Gol of Vrindavan. She's a pure devotee of Krishna.
Yeah, that's right. Surabhi is the origin of all the cows. Yeah, she's the original cow from the spiritual world. So Indra had to go to the spiritual world, isn't it, to bring Surabhi to Krishna so that he could actually be forgiven. And Surabhi advised Surabhi advised Indra that you need to approach Krishna when he's on his own. That way you'll be forgiven. That was her advice. So, and that's very difficult because Krishna is always with someone. Krishna is hardly ever alone. Krishna is never alone practically. And Krishna is always enjoying with his devotees. So there's one particular day where Lord Balaram didn't go to the forest with Krishna. This was a few days after the Govardhan hill was lifted. And so that was the day that Surabhi said, yeah, go now. Now's your chance. Krishna's on his own. Go and ask for forgiveness. So Indra is only told to go back to heaven. He doesn't get told anything more, and to be careful of his pride. But now Surabhi cow comes and prays as well on Indra's behalf. So she's offering prayers on behalf, and she's asking for Indra's forgiveness. She's saying, like, Indra has a really important post, just like you are, like, have an important post for us in the spiritual world. Indra has an important post for everyone in the material world. So she's appealing to Krishna in that way. And then they offer Krishna an abhishek, as is described here. They bathe Krishna, yeah. And what do they bathe Krishna with? We're going to read about that in the next paragraph. Okay. So let's continue on to the next one. If Jay Prakash Prabhu doesn't mind reading. I think you're on mute at the moment, Prabhu.
Sorry. Then the Surabhi cow bathed Krishna with the milk, and Indra bathed him with the water of celestial Ganges through the trunk of his carrier elephant. After this, the Surabhi cows and all the demigods and their mothers joined the heavenly king Indra in worshipping Lord Krishna by bathing him with the Ganges water and the milk of the Surabhis. Thus, Govinda, Lord Krishna, was pleased with all of them, the residents of all higher planetary systems such as Gandharvlok, Vidyadharlok, Siddharlok, and Charanalok, all combined and glorified the Lord by chanting his holy name as their wives and themselves danced with great joy. They very much satisfied the Lord by incessantly pouring flowers from the sky. When everything was very nicely and joyfully settled, the cows overflooded the surface of the earth with their milk. The water of the rivers began to flow with various taste liquids and gave nourishment to the trees, producing fruits and flowers of different colors and tastes. The trees began to pour drops of honey. The hills and mountains began to produce potent medicinal plants and valuable stones because of Krishna's presence. All these things happened very nicely, and the lower animals who were generally envious of one another were envious no longer.
Okay. Actually, if you want to read the next paragraph as well, Prabhu.
Okay. After satisfying Krishna, who is the lord of all the cows in Vrindavan, and who is known as Govinda, King Indra took his permission to return to his heavenly kingdom. As he passed through the cosmic space, he was surrounded by all kinds of demigods. This great incident is a powerful example of how Krishna consciousness can benefit the world. Even the low animals forget their envious nature and become elevated to the qualities of the demigods. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 27th chapter of Krishna, praised by Indra, the king of heaven. Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. So just going back to the start of this part of the reading. So then, how was Krishna given the Abhishek? He was given Abhishek with different ingredients, right? So let's just recap on that and reflect on that.
By milk and Ganges water.
That's right, yeah. So the
Not
Surabhi cow, she gave her own milk.
Celestial Ganges water for that.
Yeah. Yes, that's right, Prabhu. So even her milk was transcendental milk. It was milk from the spiritual world. Yeah. So that was the
True.
milk which they bathed Krishna with. And as you rightly said, there was heavenly Ganges water as well, celestial Ganges water. So Indra, he has a mount. All of the devas, they all have a different vehicle or a different animal which they ride with. Yeah. So there's a clue here as to Indra's carrier is. Who is that?
Elephant.
An elephant. That's right. Yeah, and of course he's not an ordinary elephant. He's a heavenly elephant. Yeah.
Is it called Airavat?
That's right. Yeah, Airavat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his name is Airavat, and the cow is called Surabhi, and they're both bathing Krishna with milk and Ganges water. And Airavat has he's got multiple what do they call it, trunks. He's got many trunks, not just one. That's one feature about him.
I think they both appeared during the Samudra Manthan, Ayurvat elephant and Surabhi cow.
Yeah.
I remember reading about it somewhere.
Yeah, they came from the churning of the ocean. Yeah. So they have that in common as well.
Yeah, and there is I think the footprints of Ayurvat somewhere when you do the parikrama. Govardhan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there is because it says somewhere when you're doing. I haven't been there, but there is footprints of Ayurveda.
Yeah, I think we sent out a link a few weeks ago You can watch a video by Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, and he takes us around on the video. He does like a virtual tour of Govardhan Hill, and you can see all the places where he stops. We also found another more updated version of that movie, so we could send that one out this week if you'd like to see that. Yeah. Okay, we'll send that one out too. Okay, then moving on in this paragraph then. There's a point made here. It's not made very explicitly, but there's a point here about Prabhupada calls Krishna Govinda in this paragraph. And in the scriptures, it's mentioned that this is the first time where Krishna is given that name, Govinda. So all the demigods, when they bathe Krishna, when they all accompany the bathing of Krishna, they're all calling from the heavens, Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. Who's that? Can you say
The funny one.
funny one? Who's funny?
The daddy.
You can see Daddy. She spotted you on the screen straight away, Mom. No one can see you.
Haribo.
Daddy, too funny. She got a yellow room back.
You want to hear the Krishna book? No? Okay then. Bhakti Priya? Bhakti Priya? Okay, let's continue for a little while.
I'll show you something.
What?
Show you, huh?
What is it, Mama?
So one thing that's new in this pastime is that Krishna is called Govinda. This is how he gets the name Govinda. Because the Surabi cow petitions on Indra's behalf, the devas, they call Krishna Govinda. Because what does Govinda mean? Does anyone know? The name Govinda? It's in two parts, the name, Go and Vinda.
I think that I'm just having go. I think the go is as in cow, isn't it? So is it
Yeah.
the one who so basically he's the cowherd, isn't it? So is that something to do with that? Something
Yeah,
with-
Krishna's, that's exactly it. Yeah, Krishna is the cowherd, or he's the master of the cows. Govinda means the master of the cows. So because of that, because the Surabi cow was able to please Krishna, then he got this name Govinda from the demigods. And actually, it's just Krishna's spiritual name. So actually, it's his eternal name. But that name was what was chanted, as it said here, with great joy, and everyone danced. Yeah, by chanting Govinda. This is very common actually in South Indian temples. I don't know if anyone's from South India. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
Amu Mataji's here. Sorry, I didn't see you. Hi Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhu.
It's very common in South Indian temples, right?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. Particularly in Tirupati, they call Govinda quite a lot.
So they just chant like that, Govinda, Govinda,
Yeah.
Govinda, Govinda.
Yeah. Normally, generally itself, like as we say Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, they do say Govinda.
Yeah. So I've never been to Tirupati, but I've heard that they when you climb the Tirumala hill, they're chanting Govinda, Govinda on the way.
Yes, Prabhu.
Have you been?
Yes, Prabhu. I have been once,
Wow.
but it's amazing. The deities are amazing, completely filled with diamond.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about Tirupati Balaji?
I don't know much about it because I'm from Chennai. That's in Andhra Pradesh.
Yeah.
But it's a very famous temple. They don't, it's just a second, we could hardly get a second of darshan, that's it. Maybe hardly a couple of seconds, we would say. If we get that, we are so blessed, because it's completely packed. But the deities are so amazing. Lots, and he is very rich as well. Lots and lots of donations he gets. It's quite good.
Yeah. So Tirupati Balaji temple is the wealthiest temple in the world, isn't it?
Yes, Prabhu.
And,
He
and
is
every
very
day
rich.
the Lord is like decked with jewelry, like so much opulent jewelry.
Yeah, people put
Diamonds and
people try to donate crores and crores in the hundi. Daily he gets quite a lot, more than a crore, I think, come
wow.
in Indian rupees. Yeah, that's daily.
So that's another place you can go to chant Govinda, Govinda. Mom, have you been to Tirupati?
I haven't been to Tirupati, but it kind of rings a bell that there is a story about devotees donating money, and it was something to link with Lakshmi Q. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. That's why it's so much donations coming in. Whether it's if you donate and you get more to it or something like that, I'm not sure. But I haven't been to Tirupati, no.
Mm.
I've just been to Udupi and Hampi and that side, and the end of South India. So that's where the yatra was.
Yeah.
Yes, Mataji, you're right. Actually, to marry Lakshmi, he needs more money. That's the reason. He goes out. He goes out to get money. So the people do donate more and more. This pastime is also related to, I forgot the Muni's name. He went to Vaikunta and placed his feet on Lord's chest. So Lakshmi would Lakshmi would not be happy about about that Muni's behavior, and she would come
Bhrigu Muni, yeah?
down. Yeah, Bhrigu Muni. Sorry, I forgot the name of the Muni. So she would come down to earthly planet, and Lord will come as Balaji, and he would like to marry Lakshmi, but she is so wealthy. He is not that wealthy, so he he got debt from Gubera, and so there is a lot of story behind it. Yes, just now I do remember when Mataji was talking about it. Yeah, that's the reason. Like, he goes out and gets money from people to marry Lakshmi.
So if you want to hear that pastime of how that came about, that's the last chapter of the Krishna book. It's the last chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Wow.
So we'll get to that one day. Still some time to go. Chapter 90, I think it is. So yeah, this is how Krishna got the name Govinda. Or at least how the name Govinda became known. And so with the pouring of the Ganges water and the Surabhi's milk, then everything in Vrindavan became alive again, because everything was destroyed by Indra. Yeah. And then everything became alive and fresh again, as is said here. Yeah. And all the animals were like peaceful again. Yeah. So any reflections from this this chapter we've been reading before we go ahead, or any questions from anyone? We've been reading about this pastime actually for about 3 chapters now, or even 4. One thing I never mentioned, I think, earlier, because the chapters prior to the Govardhan pastime starting was the those brahmanas. Remember the brahmanas who were the proud brahmanas, and their wives had come to give food to Krishna. Yeah, the cowherd boys begged for food from them. So Krishna actually engaged them in the sacrifice. They were the ones that Krishna engaged in the sacrifice for. Well, it was Nanda Maharaj who, those Brahmins, they realized that they were proud and they asked for forgiveness, right? They condemned themselves. Do you remember that pastime? Quite a few weeks back now. But when they asked for forgiveness, then Krishna forgave them. And it was just after that this pastime started, this Govardhan pastime, when Nanda Maharaj, he engaged the same Brahmins on performing the Indra Yagya, right? And Krishna again diverted them from doing a demigod worship to worshipping Govardhan hill. Yeah. And so that's why Indra became angry, because those Brahmins, they were already performing materialistic sacrifices. So Krishna again wanted them to do spiritual sacrifices. So they got that chance in this pastime. That's another feature of this pastime, that it was those Brahmins who were the ones who actually got to perform the Govardhan puja, the worship of Govardhan. So there's actually so many things that come from this one pastime. Yeah, Krishna wanted to spend 7 days with all of the residents of Vrindavan at one go, because they would only see Krishna at one point or another in the day. So that was another thing Krishna wanted to fulfill, the 7-day festival. Yeah, Krishna wanted to show the greatness of the Govardhan hill itself. Yeah, how glorious Govardhan hill was. And Krishna himself manifested the form from the Govardhan hill and ate all of the offerings, just to show how important, how worshipable Govardhan hill is none different from him, Krishna himself. And the land of Vrindavan is so dear to Krishna. And then, of course, Krishna wanted to teach Indra a lesson as well, isn't it? Yeah. So this is kind of the central theme of the pastime. And Indra, he learns his lesson and he begs forgiveness. So these are some of the key points. Was there anything else that you guys had gathered from the pastime? Okay, then we can move on to the next one, which is chapter 28. So Shamarani Mataji, would you like to read for us?
Yes, please, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Chapter 28, releasing Nanda Maharaj from the clutches of Varuna. Oops. The Govardhan ceremony took place on the new moon day. After this, there were torrents of rain and hailstorms imposed by King Indra for 7 days. 9 days of the waxing moon having passed, on the 10th day King Indra worshipped Lord Krishna, and thus the matter was satisfactorily settled. After this, on the 11th day of the full moon, there was Ekadashi. Maharaj Nanda observed fasting for the whole day, and just early in the morning of the Dwadashi, the day after Ekadashi, he went to take bath in the river Yamuna. He entered deep into the water of the river, but he was arrested immediately by one of the servants of Varunadev. These servants brought Nanda Maharaj before the demigods Varuna and accused him of taking a bath in the river at the wrong time. According to astronomical calculations, the time in which he took bath was considered demoniac. The fact was that Nanda Maharaj wanted to take a bath in the river Yamuna early in the morning before the sunrise, but somehow or the other he was a little too early, and he bathed at an inauspicious time. Consequently, he was arrested. Shall I carry on, Prabhu?
We'll just stop and
Okay, yeah.
just go over this again. Okay. So what's the summary of this paragraph? Anyone say? How could you summarize this paragraph in a few words, a couple of sentences? Hope it wasn't too difficult to follow.
Sorry. So the King Indra wanted, it was Ekadashi coming up, and King Indra wanted to have to bathe in the, I forgot the river name. Yamuna early in the morning. But when he went to take the when he went for a bathing, the servant of Varun Dev, they arrested him apparently because it wasn't the right time.
Yeah. So who's Varuna? Does anyone know?
The god of water,
Sorry.
the god of water, oceans.
Yes, that's right. He's the lord of the oceans, the waters. Yeah. And he's also he also is the lord of the abode of all of the lower animals. You know, so all the aquatics and reptiles and those type of animals. So he's their lord, just like Indra is the lord of the heavenly beings. Varun is the lord of the lower animals. Yeah. But at the same time, he's still a demigod. Yeah. So he still has a demigod body. So basically, there's some like, you know, minute kind of Vedic injunction which was transgressed by Nanda Maharaj, and again this kind of brings rise to another pastime. Yeah. So for one who's not aware, they may read the pastimes of Krishna, and it may seem like, you know, first Nanda Maharaj, he made the mistake of, you know, wanting to worship Indra, and now in this pastime he's you know, going at the wrong time to bathe on Ekadashi. So what would we say to someone who has this kind of understanding, this misunderstanding? How can we explain the position of Nanda Maharaj and his activities?
Was it like it was all like Krishna Lila, because it doesn't seem like it's something he would get wrong. So you know, it was something planning of Krishna, maybe something coming, maybe a lesson for somebody else to learn. You know?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So again, these are just pastimes for our instructions. Krishna is coming from his eternal abode with his eternal associates, where they enjoy pastimes every day, and they're performing leelas or plays in ways that we can learn. They're, you know, making so-called mistakes, you know, so that we can learn from them. Like sometimes you see in the theater they have these what are called parodies, and these kind of different kinds of dramas, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like there's a certain kind of humor to those, where they make like a mistake, and, you know, it leads to a bunch of events, right? So they're coming to this world, and they're performing these pastimes just so that we can learn what pleases Krishna. Otherwise, we would have no idea. Yeah, we would have no idea otherwise. So it's not that the persons in the pastimes are at all faulty. Krishna's eternal associates never faulty in anything they do. It's important to understand that. But they're just performing these pastimes in order to show the glory of Krishna. Because the point is that we're in the material world. Yeah, we're full of faults because we're in this material world. But still, Krishna can save us no matter what our position. So even if the eternal residents of spiritual, they come down to this world and perform human-like activities, which may seem faulty, but Krishna always saves them. Yeah. So there's great hope for us. That's the meaning here. So seemingly he bathed at the wrong time. It was a few minutes early, before the sunrise actually came out. You know, he didn't have his atomic clock with him, and you know, it was a few minutes early. It was a minor mistake, and he bathed in the river. And then the soldiers of Varun, they came to catch him. Okay. So it's not something that commonly happens, right? Someone goes for a dip in the river, and like they're just never to be seen again because Varun's caught them, right? Let's see how the pastime continues then. Vishamrani, did you read it?
Hare Krishna. When Nanda Maharaj was taken away by Varuna's servants, his companions began to call loudly for Krishna and Balram. Immediately, Krishna and Balram could understand that Nanda Maharaj had been taken by Varuna, and thus they went to the abode of Varuna, for they were pledged to give protection. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, the unalloyed devotees of the Lord, having no shelter other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally cried to him for help, exactly like children who do not know anything but the protection of their parents. Demigod Varuna received Lord Krishna and Balaram with great respect and said, "My dear Lord, actually at this very moment, because of your presence, my life as the demigod Varuna has become successful. Although I am the proprietor of all the treasures in the water, I know that such a possessions do not make for a successful life. But this moment, as I look at you, my life is made completely successful, because by seeing you, I no longer have to accept a material body. Therefore, O Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Supreme Brahman, and super soul of everything, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the Supreme Transcendental Personality. There is no possibility of imposing the influence of material nature upon you. I am very sorry that my men, being foolish, by not knowing what to do or what not to do, have mistakenly arrested your father, Nanda Maharaj. So I beg your pardon for the offense of my servants. I think that it was your plan to show me your mercy by your personal presence here. My dear Lord Krishna, Govinda, be merciful upon me. Here is your father. You can take him back immediately.
Okay. So, who can summarize this paragraph briefly? Everyone's welcome to share something. Don't be shy, please. So we get to know what Varun's like in this pastime. Varun is the Lord of the waters, and he has servants everywhere. So the servants took Nanda Maharaj and Nanda Maharaj's friends called for Krishna, who knew what was happening. So Krishna dove into the water to go and see Varun, to see what was his reason for taking Nanda Maharaj. Okay. And again, with many of these pastimes, there are different reasons why all these things happen. Yeah. So in this case, Varun actually wanted to see Krishna. Yeah. So he had to do something which was, contrary to what he would normally do, just so that he could get Krishna's darshan. Yeah. And then he apologized for it. Yeah. And so he was so very grateful actually that he saw Krishna. He says he was like very respectful that he got to see Krishna. But to do that, he had to kidnap Krishna's father. So as we've been reading from previous chapters, I'll just add something here, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our Acharya, he teaches us that all of the different demons, they represent different anartas. Yeah, you familiar with this concept now? I think. Yeah, they all represent unwanted qualities. Yeah. So Varun, although he's not actually a demon, he's also teaching us something. And he symbolizes intoxication in this sense. So there are a certain class of people who believe that, to actually have spiritual experiences, you need to take intoxications, isn't it? In India, you find such people, they smoke, what's it called, bhang, isn't it? And they try to become like Lord Shiva and so on. So that's it. This kind of thinking should be given up. And by reading this pastime, one can actually give up the intoxicants that are not required for progress in spiritual life. Yeah. Just wanted to add a little bit there on this pastime. So then Varun, he releases Nanda Maharaj, of course, and we'll continue reading. Shamrani Mataji.
Okay, Krishna. In this way, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rescued his father and presented him before his friends with great jubilation. Nanda Maharaj was surprised that, although the demigod was so opulent, he offered such a respect to Krishna. That was very astonishing to Nanda, and he began to describe the incident to his friends and relatives with great wonder. Shall I carry on, Prabhu?
So I just wanted to add one thing on this.
Yeah, sure.
Because it was interesting how when Varuna spoke, he mentions how he's a proprietor of all the treasures in the water. So what's he talking about there when he says that? Does anyone know? What do you think he might be referring to? The treasures in the water.
Pearls.
Pearls. Yeah, that's one of the treasures. Yeah. What else? There's actually reefs and reefs full of treasures.
I think he had all the treasure because he was a king of the waters. So as a king, he had all the opulences. So it was all sorts of treasures he had. It was like a kingdom, wasn't it, when he Nanda Maharaj was captured there?
That's right. He has a specific, because as a king of underwater, the underworlds, he has a specific kind of treasure as the king. And then just the same way Indra, he has a different kind of treasure, being the king of the heavenly worlds. So Indra has like heavenly treasures, and Varuna has like underworld kind of treasures, you know. So all the precious minerals and stones and gems and all these kind of things which you find underground, these are the types of treasures that Varuna has in abundance. Yeah. And what he says is interesting because he says, although I am the proprietor of all the treasures in the water, I know that such possessions do not make for a successful life. So his realization is very opposite to Indra, because Indra thought because he had all these treasures, you know, he's the big shot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas Varuna's approach is very different. He's thinking, you know, even though I've got all these treasures, you know, it's worth nothing if I don't get to see Krishna for a moment. Yeah. So of course Krishna is very pleased by this. Yeah. He comes personally to see him and to take his father back. And then Nanda Maharaj is so like surprised that Krishna has given so much respect and worship. Okay. So we can continue from here.
Actually, although Krishna was acting so wonderfully, Maharaj Nand and Mother Yashoda could not think of him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead, they always accepted him as their beloved child. Thus, Nanda Maharaj did not accept the fact that Varuna worshipped Krishna because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he took it that because Krishna was such a wonderful child, he was respected even by Varuna. The friends of Nanda Maharaj, all the cowherd men, became eager to know if Krishna were actually the Supreme Personality. Because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he took it that because Krishna was such a wonderful child, he was respected even by Varuna. The friends of Nanda Maharaj, all the cowherd men, became eager to know if Krishna were actually the Supreme Personality and if he were going to give them all salvation. When they were all thus consulting among themselves, Krishna understood their minds, and in order to assure them of their destiny in the spiritual kingdom, he showed them the spiritual sky. Generally, ordinary persons are engaged simply in working hard in the material world, and they have no information that there is another kingdom or another sky, which is known as the spiritual sky, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, a person returning to that spiritual sky never returns to this material world of death and suffering.
Thank you, Mataji. So here we're reading about two kinds of devotees. Yeah. There's the devotees like Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. Yeah, they couldn't accept that Krishna was the Supreme Lord. They just couldn't, just couldn't, that kind of thought couldn't enter their mind. On the other hand, you have these devotees who are like constantly wondering, how Krishna is doing such amazing things. Huh? How is it possible? So, so you have these two groups of devotees. So, we read previously how they got together and they basically tried to get the truth out of Nanda Maharaj, isn't it? Like, who is your son? Do you remember? We read about this. Yeah. That happened after Krishna picked up the Govardhan hill, isn't it? He said, how could your boy pick up a hill, a mountain? Yeah. And now Krishna's gone underwater and he's brought his father back from Bharan as well. So now they're not consulting Nanda Maharaj anymore. They know like Nanda Maharaj is just and he's just like completely transcendental to it all, as we say. So actually, this tells us something about there's two types of devotees that enter into the Krishna pastimes. There are the eternal associates of Krishna who come with Krishna to the material world to have these pastimes. And then there's the souls in the material world who are returning to the spiritual world, or they're jumping on the train, so to speak. They're jumping on the bandwagon back to Godhead. Yeah. So they're wondering, like, this Krishna is such a wonderful personality, and they all love him very much. Yeah. And because of that, because they're developing that relationship with him, they're establishing their relationship with him when he performs his pastimes in the material world, they're eligible to go back to the spiritual world. Yeah. So what does this mean for us? How is this useful for us to understand? What do you think?
Is that like we can, what kind of devotee do we want to be?
What
Like
kind of devotee do you want to be? Okay.
Yeah, the one reaching towards the spiritual sky, or the one who wants to have like a personal relationship with Krishna?
Yeah, that's right. That's one. Yeah, that's one point of view. So what kind of devotee do we want to be? Anyone else? I was thinking that this is instructive for us because it shows us where we can go after practicing spiritual life in this very life, our lifetime now. If we practice spiritual life properly, we'll get an opportunity to connect with Krishna in our next life. When Krishna performs his pastime in different material worlds, different material universes, we can join him in those universes. Just like these friends of Nanda Maharaj, they joined Nanda Maharaj. They weren't on the same level as Nanda Maharaj. They weren't eternally liberated souls, but they joined him. They jumped on that spiritual bandwagon. So that's an opportunity for us in practicing spiritual life. That's an impetus that we can rejoin Krishna in the eternal pastimes with him. Yeah. And then Prabhupada concludes by saying that, like in Bhagavad Gita, it says, one who returns to the spiritual world, they don't have to take birth in this world again. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just seeing if my mom's here. Hi, well, Mom, would you be able to read the next section?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it just keeps on coming as you can't do the video on. The host has signed you off, so I can't turn my video on.
Okay, I can turn it on from here, I think. You should be able to turn it on when you need to.
Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always eager to give information to the conditioned soul, and that there is a spiritual sky far, far beyond this material sky, transcendental to the innumerable universes created within the total material energy. Krishna is, of course, always very kind to every conditioned soul, but as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, is especially inclined to the pure devotee. Hearing these inquiries, Krishna immediately thought that his devotees in Vrindavan should be informed of the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha planets there are in. Carry on. Within the material world, every conditioned soul is in the darkness of ignorance, and this means that all conditioned souls are under the concept of bodily existence. Everyone is under the impression that he is of the material world, and with the concept of the life, everyone is working in ignorance in different forms of life. The activities of the particular type of body are called karma or fruitive action. All conditioned souls being under the impression of the bodily concept are working according to their particular type of body. These activities are creating their future conditioned life because they have very little information of the spiritual world. They do not generally take to spiritual activities, which are called bhakti yoga. Those who successfully practice bhakti yoga go directly to the spiritual world after giving up the present body, and there they become situated in one of the Vaikuntha planets. The inhabitants of Vrindavan are all pure devotees. Their destination after quitting the body is Krishna Loka. They even surpass the Vaikuntha Lokas. The fact is that those who are always engaged in Krishna consciousness and mature, pure devotional service are given the chance after death to gain Krishna's association in one of the universes within the material world. Krishna's pastimes are continuously going on, either in this universe or in another universe. Just as the sun globe is passing over many places across this earthly planet, so Krishna Lila, or the transcendental advent and pastimes of Krishna, are also going on continuously, either in this or another universe. The mature devotees who are completely executed Krishna consciousness are immediately transferred to the universe where Krishna is appearing in that universe, and the devotees get more first-time opportunity to associate with Krishna personally and directly. The training goes on, and we see in the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna within this planet, Krishna thereafter revealed the actual features of Vaikuntha planet so that the inhabitants of Vrindavan would now know the destinations.
Okay, thanks, Mom. So many points here, Prabhupada makes many different points here. So instead of going through all of it, let's just see if anyone wants to discuss any of the points in here. Which points stand out for you or interesting to you?
I have a question.
Okay.
Does he show them the spiritual sky, or is he explaining it to them?
So Krishna, when he says the spiritual, when the Bhagavatam says the spiritual sky, it kind of means the spiritual atmosphere. You can take it to mean like the spiritual atmosphere, like the environment of the spiritual world, not like the sky as we see it, like when you look out the window and look up and see, you know, the clouds and the sky. So what Krishna is showing them is a spiritual atmosphere in Vrindavan. Yeah.
Okay, so this atmosphere that you guys are feeling right now, that's there in Vagrant?
Yeah. So they're seeing all the whole environment of Vrindavan is spiritual. Just like if we just take from the previous chapter, you know, when the Surabhi cow poured milk and the Airavata elephant poured Ganges water all over the earth, everything just became alive again. You know, it's like a transcendental thing that happened by Krishna's grace. So like that, a lot of things that are happening in the Krishna Leela, they're all very mystical and all very transcendental. Yeah, they're not. Nothing is ordinary that happens in Vrindavan. So Krishna is showing them every day some mystical happenings. You know. So that's what Krishna is trying to show them, the spiritual sky or the spiritual atmosphere. Yeah.
So they don't really know that this is what Vagrant is like, though, do they? They're just getting like joy just being around Krishna, but they have that feeling that he may be like a supreme personality. So maybe this is what it's like to be around a supreme personality.
Yeah, that's right. So they worship Krishna in their previous lives as the Supreme Lord. So they're appreciating that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and that thought is always in the background of their minds. But when they meet Krishna and they're in the pastimes in the material world, that training, as Prabhupada says, that training is still going on. So they're learning to love Krishna for his personality, you know, for his sweetness. They're learning to love Krishna like that, rather than to appreciate him just because he's the supreme. Just because he's God, then we'll worship him, you know? Because this is kind of the, Prabhupada uses this word here a lot. They have matured their spiritual life, they're mature devotees. Yeah. So the mature devotee, they have a relationship with Krishna, they have a relationship with the personality of Krishna rather than the immature devotee is more someone who is just like Krishna's God, so then we should worship him, you know? Whoever's God, we should worship that person. But the mature devotee, they actually love Krishna for who he is. God or not God, it doesn't really matter. Like Nanda Maharaj, he's always denying that Krishna is God. He's like, you know, he's already a mature devotee. So that's the training that they're getting. They're actually loving Krishna for who he is, what his personality is. You know? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Prabhu. Thank you.
Did you want to ask something else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Just want to see if anyone else has any thoughts or reflections on that. So I was listening to this class by Srila Prabhupada in the morning, and he made this really interesting point. He was saying like our alphabet, it goes from A to Z, yeah? A, B, C, X, Y, Z, right? So our perception of what we can understand, like, you know, what we're cognizant of is just between A and Z, whatever we can put into words from between A and Z. Similarly, in Sanskrit, you have the Sanskrit alphabet is, it starts with A, Aksha. Aksha, the alphabet is called Aksha. It starts with A and finishes with Ksha. Is the last letter of the Sanskrit alphabet. Prabhupada was explaining this way. Yeah. So Krishna, because he's a supreme Lord, he's actually beyond our understanding. So Krishna has a name which is Adokshaja, which means he's beyond the A to Z of our understanding. He's outside of our experience of understanding. Because his name is Adokshaja. So he's beyond A and Ksha. Aksha. So he's Adokshaja. So Prabhupada was giving this wonderful explanation. So this is the world that they're entering into, this this transcendental world. That helps explain it a little bit more succinctly. Archana Mataji, did you want to make a comment or did you have a question?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I just
Krishna.
wanted to mention about Krishna's pastime are continuously going on either in this universe or another universe. So can you explain a little bit on this? Is it still happening, or is they just talking about that time?
Yeah, I'll open this up for the devotees in the group to share something. Can anyone add to that or explain that for Archana Mataji?
I heard from a class somewhere that this pastime are continuously happening. So it's maybe, well, the pastimes in the earthly planet happened 5,000 years ago, but once it finished here, it starts happening in another planet. So it's continuously happening in there's so many planets. Earth planet is one of them, but there's so many other planets. So this is what I heard in one of the classes, that they're continuously happening in one or the other planet. So anybody who is kind of matured in their devotional service, they go to these planets where these pastimes are happening, and they trained by the pure, the Vrijvasis. You trained by them, and then you go to the actual Krishna Loka. It's I think I heard about it in one of the classes like that.
Does that make more sense, Archana Mataji?
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
So Prabhupada adds something here as well. He says, I'll just read this. Just as a sun globe is passing over many places across this earthly planet, so Krishna Leela on the transcendental advent and pastime of Krishna are going on continuously, either in this or another universe. So what Prabhupada is saying is like, if you imagine like in one place, in one country, the sun is rising, yeah? It's just coming from dark, it's becoming morning, isn't it? Like they say, Japan is the land of the rising sun, it's known as. So everywhere else in the world, it could be dark, but in Japan, the sun is coming up, yeah? And then the next country, they get their sunrise. So you go a little bit further west, yeah? And then you have the, the other Far Eastern countries, and then China, and then, India, South Asia, and then, you go a bit further west, and you have the Middle East, and the sun is rising in the Saudi regions, So it's like it was 9 o'clock there, and now it's 10, 11 o'clock there. Then it becomes 7, 8, 9 o'clock here. Then it becomes 10, 11 o'clock here. And then it carries on, isn't it? So the sun isn't actually moving, right? The sun is not actually moving. Krishna is not actually moving as such from place to place, but his pastimes are being manifested. Krishna shows his pastimes in different places. Just like the sun isn't moving, but the sun can be seen at different times in different places. And then eventually the sun sets in Japan, but the sun is still rising in America or somewhere, See? So like that, Krishna, he moves his pastimes from place to place. But this isn't on the scale of like this earth globe. Yeah, this is on the scale of universes, that it starts in this universe, let's say on the left, just to keep things simple. It starts in this universe, and then it goes to this universe, and then to this universe, and this universe, and this, and this, and this. Yeah, and there's millions of universes. We just think that we're in one universe. There's only one, but there's millions of universes, and Krishna is performing his pastimes one to the next, to the next. And then that's just Krishna's pastimes, and there's so many avatars, one after another after another. Huh? So in that way we can understand Krishna's pastimes always being shown in this material world. The Prabhupada is giving us a really wonderful analogy here to help us understand. Is that okay, Mataji? Yeah.
Perfect.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Just to confirm, because I heard that like the demons, they don't exist in like Golok Vrindavan. These pastimes just keep occurring in the material world, right? Like how you say, from one universe to another.
Yes. So did you say that the demons, they don't appear in the spiritual world?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. So Krishna, when he has his pastimes in the spiritual world, they're called Nitya Leela. Okay. So in the Nitya Leela, there's no demons. There's no Krishna doesn't fight every day with demons like in Vrindavan in the what's called the Naimatika Leela, or the worldly pastimes. So when Krishna wants to have a good fight, then he has to come to the material world to do those kind of pastimes. And then all the devotees, they want to come with him. Yeah, and then Krishna has to save them time and time again. But in the spiritual world, there isn't that same pastime. It's a different kinds of pastimes that happen. So what kind of pastimes are those? We'll just have to go there and find out. The Nitya Leela. We'll have to find out for ourselves when we get there. So the Krishna book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, is based on the Naimatika Leela, the worldly pastime of Krishna, because they're instructive for us. Yeah. We could, if we heard about all the pastimes of the Nitya Leela, we wouldn't be able to relate to them so much with the material body. So Prabhupada is saying here repeatedly, because we have this body which has got karma, we're under the influence of the modes of nature, we don't have much spiritual information, we can't really relate to Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world. And therefore Krishna comes and performs these Naimatika Leelas, these worldly pastimes, so we can understand how we can be saved by Krishna. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Okay. So, Mom, would you like to continue reading? Your microphone's on mute, Mom, so we can't hear you yet.
Thus, Krishna showed them the eternal, ever-existing spiritual sky, which is unlimited and full of knowledge. Within the material world, there are different grades of forms, and according to the grade, knowledge is proportionally manifested. For example, the knowledge in the body of a child is not as perfect as the knowledge of the body of an adult. Everywhere there are different grades of living entities in aquatic animals, in the plants and trees, in the reptiles and insects, in birds and beasts, and in the civilized and uncivilized human forms of life. Above the human form of life, there are demigods, charanas, siddhas, and up to the Brahmalok, where Lord Kali. And among these demigods, there are always different grades of knowledge. But past this material world, in the spiritual sky, everyone is full of knowledge, and therefore all the living entities there are engaged in devotional service of the Lord, either in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Krishna Loka. Carry on.
Just a moment, sorry. Just having some problems with my laptop, because I don't have my battery with me. And it looks like it's going to turn off any minute. Uh-oh. Let's just discuss this for a couple of minutes, and then I'll go and have to get my charger while you're reading the next part. I think this is kind of what we discussed just previously, isn't it? Well, Prabhupada here is giving an example of different types of consciousness. Yeah. So did we catch that? What the example Srila Prabhupada is giving is? Yeah.
It's about the trees, animals, aquatic, different types of animals have got different consciousness. Insects and birds, and the civilized and uncivilized human being. They all have different types of consciousness.
Yeah. So in Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning, Krishna is telling Arjuna in chapter 2, right at the beginning, Krishna is saying that he's giving the science of the soul. He makes a really amazing statement. I just remember the first time I even read it, I was like, wow, the soul is as powerful as 10,000 suns, Krishna says. So whose soul is as powerful as 10,000 suns? Who is Krishna talking about? Have a guess? I think Shamrani Mataji is about to guess. Tell us. No? Okay, anyone else? When Krishna says a soul is as powerful as 10,000 suns.
Is
It's
it
not a trick
everybody's
question.
soul?
Everybody's soul. Yeah, Krishna is saying all the souls. Right? So if I was to tell you, Shamrani Mataji, you're as powerful as 10,000 suns, would you believe it? That's the fact.
No.
Right?
Wow.
So you can see how conditioned we are then. You see from
Yeah.
Krishna's statement. So that's what Prabhupada is bringing out here. That our soul, we haven't had that maturity, that spiritual maturity. We're so conditioned. Yeah. And what to speak of humans, like, you know, we're trying to practice Krishna consciousness, trying our rounds every day. Yeah, we're not feeling as powerful as 10,000 suns. But what to speak of all these other animals, Prabhupada, is, you know, how conditioned they are, how forgetful they are of their original spiritual nature. Yeah. So it's a great insight, actually, that Prabhupada is giving here about actually the true position of the pure soul. Yeah. It's an extraordinary thing. Right. So if you want to continue reading, I'm going to have to run downstairs and grab my charger. I'll come back and join you in a couple of moments.
As it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, full knowledge means knowing Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that in the Brahmajyoti or spiritual sky, there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. All the planets there are self-illuminating, and all of them are eternally situated. There is no question of creation and annihilation in the Brahmajyoti or spiritual sky. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms that beyond the material sky, there is another eternal spiritual sky where everything is eternally existing. Direct knowledge of the spiritual sky can be had only by great sages and saintly persons who have already surpassed the influence of the three material modes of nature by engaging in devotional service of Krishna consciousness. Unless one is constantly situated on the transcendental platform, it is not possible to understand the spiritual nature. Therefore, it is recommended that one should take to Bhakti Yoga and keep himself engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna consciousness, which places one beyond the reach of the modes of material nature. One in Krishna consciousness can easily understand the nature of the spiritual sky and Vaikuntha. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, being always engaged in Krishna consciousness, could therefore very easily understand the transcendental nature of Vaikuntha Lok.
So you'll have to fill me in here. I missed.
Might as well finish. There's only one paragraph. Satin Prabhu.
All right. Okay. I think that paragraph is starting to summarize the next chapter
Okay.
a little bit. So let's let me just have a quick look back. If you wouldn't mind summarizing for me. Prabhupada is introducing this concept of different types of consciousness, right?
That paragraph after the different types of consciousness, it's talking about the Brahmajyoti, and that regarding the spiritual sky, that there's at the bottom somewhere it talks about no sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. But it's, I think it was saying something like up to the three modes of nature, there's only up to a certain point. But after that, when you get into devotional service, you kind of go beyond that Brahmajyoti.
Right, yeah.
that's bhakti yoga.
Yeah, that's a nice point. So let's just discuss that a little bit then. So what it's saying here, what Prabhupada is teaching us here, it seems that you can't actually get this knowledge intellectually. You can't get knowledge of the spiritual world intellectually. When I say intellectually, it means you can't actually just explain it to someone, you know? Krishna consciousness, you can only explain so much, you know, because someone will always be able to come up with a rational reason or a logical reason or a philosophical reason or a moral reason. Yeah, so people will be able to argue from different points of view that the spiritual world doesn't exist, or Krishna's pastimes don't exist, or Krishna is not real, or whatever it may be. So to address that, we can understand that because our mind, our intelligence, even our very identity, our false ego is made of this material nature, we can't actually use any of those things to understand the spiritual sky or the spiritual atmosphere, the spiritual world, which is above the three modes, because all these faculties which we're using to try and understand Krishna, they're all limited. They're all made of these material elements anyway. Yeah. So how can we understand like there's this planet which is just like self-illuminating, and Krishna, he's effulgent himself. He himself is effulgent. His planet is effulgent. And everything manifests from him. Everything comes from him. Yet he's still standing there as himself. And then he's also within everything. How can we understand that? We can't understand that. It's inconceivable. Yeah. And then not only is he independent of everything which he creates, and then he enters into everything, but then he also himself he also incarnates into that nature as well. Yeah. So we just actually can't understand Krishna. That's the bottom line. With material senses, you can't understand. Material mind, material intelligence, it's not possible. Even for the great sages, So only devotional service, we can understand Krishna. We can experience Krishna, in other words, through bhakti, through devotion. Yeah, it has to be experienced.
It's like, could you still question that still kind of ends up being psychological, like you get attached to something, getting attached to, so there's the Supreme, and you see the Supreme in a personal form, and you do devotional service because that's the way you want to connect. That, and emotions and everything can happen and all of that, which, like you said, mind and intelligence can't explain, but at the same time, it could just be psychological.
Yeah. So this is another argument, So this is exactly the point. You could say this is just a psychological thing, like by logic and reason, you can argue or explain away all the principles of Krishna consciousness. That's a fact, and that's why we don't go on that basis, because everybody can have their own opinion. You see. So on what basis can we say there is spiritual life? Our basis of a spiritual life is the scriptures, because we accept the scriptures to be spiritual. We accept the scriptures to be transcendental. We accept the scriptures to be something which is not of this world. Yeah. Prabhupada says the Aviroha Pantha. We follow that path which is spiritual. So who is our authority? Is what it comes down to. Who we're going to place our faith in? We have to place our faith somewhere. We can place our faith in mathematicians, in politicians, in scientists, in scienceologists, in Scientology. Like we can place our faith anywhere we want. We can say, this is my authority, this is my reference point, what's true and what's not true. So for us as devotees, our reference point is Krishna, his teachings. Yeah, this is what makes the most sense to us. This is what is most experientially satisfying for us. This is what's most nourishing for us. Yeah. And as part of that understanding, our understanding, it goes beyond this material world. And the philosophy explains, Krishna explains in his philosophy to us, that everything else is under the three modes of material nature. All other experiences are inferior to this Krishna conscious experience. So the only way you can really know it is by trying it, by fully immersing in it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, Prabhu. I still sometimes feel like when you start building your life around a certain idea, you know, there's more like that kind of energy you're putting in there, that vibration, and you end up creating it like bigger and bigger. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from on this thing. You're connecting to that, and that's not something. Again, it's just a psychological thing, and like
Yeah.
there is also that science on like that level about what you think. You're putting that kind of memory, that thought in all the bodies of your cells. So like that consciousness is going in all your cell memory and everywhere, and you end up creating stuff. So you end up creating your thought.
Yeah, so the soul is consciousness. The soul is what experiences. So when you say you end up creating your thought, you experience your thoughts. Yeah, so you're not your thoughts. You're not your mind. So that's where the understanding begins from. That we have to accept consciousness exists. When we accept consciousness exists, or when we accept that we are an observer of our thoughts or our experiences, we're actually the observer. Then the next question is, who is the observer? Yeah, because we have to start from we're not this body. If we're not this body and we're experiencing the body and the mind, then who are we? So there's nothing in there's no material explanation for that. There's no one in the material world who can explain that, because all the other education in this material world is based on the experience of the mind and the body. So Srila Prabhupada has given us a great thing, because he's given us the explanation of what is consciousness. And not only what is consciousness, what is the material consciousness and what is the spiritual consciousness. So that's our point of reference, that's our point of authority. Because no one else is explaining that, isn't it?
Yes, thanks, Guru.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at time, so I had to give a fairly strong and short answer. But happy to discuss further if you're interested afterwards. So now we're at time, and Prabhu just said that we're on the last paragraph, so maybe we could just finish with this last paragraph. I don't think it will involve much discussion, so I could just read it through. Thus Krishna led all the cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, to the lake where Akrura would later be shown the Vaikuntha planetary system. They took their bath immediately and saw the real nature of the Vaikuntha lokas. After seeing the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha lokas, all the men headed by Nanda Maharaj felt wonderfully blissful, and upon coming out of the lake, they saw Krishna, who was being worshipped with excellent prayers. Okay, so they were supposed to go for their bath on this Ekadashi day, yeah, and Nanda Maharaj, he went a little bit too early, and then after all those pastimes happened, that he was taken by Varuna and everything, they started to wonder like who Krishna is. And so then they just went on with their normal duties. They carried on their spiritual activities. It was Ekadashi, so they had their holy bath, and then they felt blissful coming out, because they realized that Krishna actually is the Supreme Lord. So their prayers were answered. Yeah. And we'll read more about this as it's giving reference to the pastime of Apura. That's going to come in the chapters to come. So we'll read more about that then. Okay. So any last comments or questions? Just opening out to anyone who still is unclear or would like to discuss anything further. Okay. Hope you will like the reading of Krishna book this week then. Yeah.
It's good, thank you.
It's always nice to hear your reflections. What points were kind of standing out to you the most? If you'd like to share.
What was nice to read in this chapter, like I don't know whether we've heard it before, but when Nand Maharaj and Yashoda always just see him as like a blessed child, and they're like, oh, you know, you get so much respect from everyone, not really seeing him as God. And it just reminds me of, I've heard that when Krishna was born to Devaki, well, he appeared there in the jail, they saw him in the four-handed form, and she didn't see him as a son, but she saw him as, you know, supreme personality. So she never actually fed her breast milk to him. That was only given to Yashoda and Putna. So yeah, the way he Krishna interacted with devotees, like what you said, there are those who are like personal associates and those who are going towards the spiritual sky, like being in his leelas.
Yeah, that's an amazing reflection. Thank you. So there was a great difference in the love that Devaki and Vasudeva had for Krishna versus Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have any key things which they really can take away from this evening? Otherwise, we could end here. Then, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, everyone.
Next week.
Now we'll do a round of japa. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So today is actually a very bittersweet occasion. For those of you who've been following the ISKCON news, today is the passing away of a very dear devotee to the ISKCON worldwide community. He's the one of the head pujaris of our world headquarters in ISKCON Mayapur. His name is Pankajari Prabhu, and he passed away around midday in India time. So he'll be very much missed at the moment by devotees worldwide. So in the past week or so, devotees have been like ardently praying for him, but the Lord decided to take him away to the spiritual world. Despite our petitioning Krishna that we want him more, it just seems that Krishna loves him that so much more. So he's left us our association now, and we'll only be able to meet him again when we return to the spiritual world. He's going to be going on and serving Srila Prabhupada and Lord Nishingadev, who we worshipped every single day. So this is our chance, the way to get back to the spiritual world. Hare Krishna Mahamantra, a way to reconnect with Krishna and all the devotees who have left our association. And in that mood, let's chant one round of japa. Yeah, and also, of course, we want to pray for the many devotees who are also suffering from COVID, if not the whole world, going through so many challenges at the moment. So we want to remember them in our prayers, and we want everyone, of course, to be engaged again in full Krishna consciousness. So this is our prayer. Okay, so on that note, you can start chanting, and then at the end you can put your hand up when you're finished. Yeah,